Each Wednesday, we try to have an extended chat with somebody. It's sort of around the news, a little bit off the news. This week, it's a heavy topic, difficult one, but a crucial one, the voluntary assisted dying scheme here in Victoria. Now, it's been in place since June 19 last year, 8.5 months. It's overseen by the Voluntary Assisted Dying Review Board. Now, we talked to Betty King, chair of that board, not long ago, a week or so ago. They told the Parliament 2 weeks ago how many people had used the scheme, and between June 19 and December 31, 52 people ended their lives under this euthanasia scheme. That exceeded the government's own estimates by more than 300%. They thought 12 people had used it in the first 6 months. In the studio with somebody heavily involved in the program, he is an oncologist. He has been present as people have made this decision, have taken their own lives, and he's, in fact, in some cases, he's helped people to do it. Dr. Cameron McLaren from Berwick, good morning.
Hi Neil, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming in. Confronting for you? Difficult for you?
Initially, yeah, I suppose this is a very new area of care that we're providing to people, and I guess we don't really know what the fallout is for anyone, patients, families, doctors involved. It's been a real learning curve.
What have you been involved in? What have you done?
I think it's the way that I've been involved is really with the patient navigators at Peter McCallum. Contacted me about a patient in need who hasn't been able to find someone more locally to assess them for their application. So I've been very much seeing people who are probably a little bit more desperate than, or on the desperate end of the spectrum. So I've been travelling over the state trying to attend them when they can't attend clinics to provide assessments and enable them to be able to access the legislation.
It's also reported in some cases where people were unable to take medication, you administered it for them?
That's right. So I've done that 3 times.
How did you do it?
So the 3 cases were all intravenous administration. So they were all done at home, which was really nice. So I just attend their home. The pharmacy comes and gives me the medications, and then I put a cannula in their arm and wait until they've said all their goodbyes and they're very ready. And then I put them to sleep.
Well, it's not putting them to sleep, is it?
Well, the medication that we use is an anaesthetic, so it is. So the medication is an anaesthetic, puts them into a deep coma, and then there's a medication afterwards that stops their breathing.
I see. Do you have to administer that as well, or does it come? Okay.
No, there's a sequence of medications.
Okay. A few doctors have done this over the years illegally and have challenged and bravely challenged the police to take them on. They haven't, but it's also taken a heavy toll on them. It's been a difficult thing to do. Are you finding it difficult?
Not from that point of view, because I've got the legislation behind me. So it's certainly. I'm dealing with some of the emotional fallback and some of the, professional differences of opinion as well, that I'm sure all of those people were dealing with as well. I think the difference with those previous cases is certainly that they were also looking over their back and wondering what was going to happen from a legal point of view. So I think I've got it a little bit easier than they had.
Well, that is true. I've got quite a few friends in the medical profession who are perhaps intellectually supportive of euthanasia and of what you're doing, but can't bring themselves to do it. They feel it fights everything that they stand for, because they spend their working hours and most of their lives trying to save lives, and to step in and end a life to them is unacceptable. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that's been basically the most amount of feedback that I've had from colleagues, is that often that they're really glad that this is available to patients, but it's not something that they can provide or they're willing to provide. And I think that comes with being bred to sustain life and prolong life, and that's always the good thing. But I think firstly I'd kind of challenge that and say that we've all seen cases where that's no longer possible, and medicine has come to its end, and sometimes all we can do is offer a comforting conversation with the patient, and now we've got another option as well.
You talked about emotional pushback. Do you mean personally?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What is it?
Well, I think I was worried about it leading into it, because before you actually see any cases, you've got this general idea about that, ending someone's life or assisting them to end their own life is on face value wrong. And so I think I was very nervous about how I would feel personally about that. But I think once I started seeing people and actually hearing their stories and dealing with each case on its individual merits, I think that's what's enabled me to avoid a lot of that emotional fallback, is that the patients I see and the patients I approve as eligible, I actually am satisfied that, not that they're doing the right thing, but they're conscious and capable to make that decision of their own right.
When, the very first time you assisted somebody, as distinct from them taking it themselves, I don't want to pry because I don't want to run any chance of identifying them, but can you tell us anything about the case? Can you anything about how they reacted?
Yeah. The very first case, you're asking specifically about intravenous administrations here.
Yes.
So the very first case was the one that was written about in the paper. So that has been identified, and that was my patient Phil, who was just a lovely guy. We connected very quickly in our first meeting. He was just a very decisive ex-financial manager, and his life had always been about control. And he had a condition where he was at risk of developing multiple cancers, so he'd battled 3 different separate types of cancer in his life, and when I met him he was dying of metastatic bladder cancer. And he had relinquished control over his body and his life for many years, treating all of these cancers. And this to him was a way to retrieve that control and gain a sense of who he was prior to the diagnosis. So it felt like a real gift for him.
What did he say to you at the time?
He actually, his last words were, "Get on with it." He actually, and then after we'd finished and he'd died, we walked out of the room, and his daughter gave me a blue filigree book that he'd written a passage in to tell me how much it meant for him for me to be able to administer this to him. So that was really quite special, and that signified to me, I guess, really that I believe in what I'm doing.
So he effectively thanked you, didn't he?
Yeah, posthumously. Yeah, yeah.
Generally, I was talking to a man the other day whose brother had used the facility, the ability to do it, and he said one of the best things about it was they had a living wake. They had a party before. I don't know. It was the day before he did it. It was very close to the event anyway.
Yeah.
Is that common?
Yeah, I've been to one. Well, not. I attended one to be there when he took the medication to support him and his family. But when I got there, there was probably 80 to 100 people there with. There was a microphone set up and speakers, and they'd been having a big party all day. And he'd decided that at 2:00 during the party he would go into his workshop and lay on his bench and take his medication, and it was really quite special. I think to have that final moment of closure for him and his family and his friends, and for everyone to be there and say what they needed to say.
So he went on to his workbench.
Yeah, in his shop. He'd obviously spent half of his retired life there. He's very fond of his woodworking, and it was just obviously a place that was very special to him.
How difficult is it for the families?
Oh, very, yeah.
Yeah, and they are still suffering that grief. Even to know this is the time this loved one will die, the lead up must be horrendous.
I think it's horrendous, no matter which way it happens. I think the counterpoint is that it's also horrendous not to know when that is, and often we see that in hospitals with patients who are being palliated in hospital on a syringe driver of medication. Is the family, the biggest question is how long is it going to be, when's it going to happen, and they're on tenterhooks just waiting for this to happen, and no one can give them an answer. So I think it's we can't make dying good, but I believe that in some instances we can make it better.
Do you believe it's correct that in hospitals we're effectively practicing a form of euthanasia anyway by that sort of palliative care to the point of suppressing respiration through morphine?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're doing. It's a practice that we typically call terminal sedation, and it's messy, it's unpredictable. Morphine's not a great drug to use for this. It's very unpredictable. It has toxicities and side effects, and it's slow. And it's not definitive. So you can give medication under what we call the doctrine of double effect, which protects you from shortening life if you're treating symptoms. But in order to do that, you can't give a definitive dose. You have to do it in increments and slowly.
Is there any way to, I've seen it happen, is there any way to improve the system as it works?
Yeah, I think there is, and this is momentous legislation. This is fantastic that it's been brought in, and I think criticisms and critiques of it need to be taken in the spirit that they're offered, and that's not that anyone's got anything wrong, but there are certain things that are combining to make the job very difficult and to make the access for patients very difficult, which is the bigger problem. I think the biggest thing for what we're experiencing is that the requirement for one of the doctors to be a specialist in a state such as Victoria has been very difficult because we have a very Melbourne-centred population of specialists, and so rural and remote patients are having a very difficult time trying to access things.
Will you continue to do it?
Yeah, I will. I think it will always form part of my practice because I do believe in it. I think at the moment I'm doing a lot of it, and I do feel as though until it becomes a part of other doctors' practice, then it will be a large part of mine. But I don't think I can do it with this intensity for many years. I think it does take its toll as well.
The Hippocratic Oath, I was reading it last night, or a modern version of it. Does it in fact say you will not take life?
It depends on which version you're using. Certainly the original version was, I don't know it verbatim, but it does say that I will not give poison to hasten death or something similar. And the Hippocratic Oath's been modified over time, and certainly when we graduated from university, there was a group of graduates who were asked to write or modify the oath for the graduation ceremony. And they had a line that was fairly similar in nature, but even then I had an opinion that I don't think you can approach situations as complex as that with a single opinion or a single approach, and so I chose not to speak that really? Line.
Really? Even then, as a graduating doctor?
Well, I just felt that there was more to it than that, and to talk in absolutes is very. I don't think that's very wise. I think there's always discussion to be had about complex issues. Dr.
Cameron McLaren, oncologist in Berwick, and has been involved in, how many cases now of assisted dying?
Over 40 now.
Over 40? That's
cases of application, not cases that have gone through to completion.
How many have you been present
at? 12.
12. You're convinced it's right?
In the cases that I've been to and I've been involved in, yes. Yeah.
Does it remove the fear of dying?
No. No one really comes to me saying that they're afraid of dying. They're afraid of the way they're going to die. They're afraid of, or not afraid, but they don't want to be remembered as someone withered in a bed, reliant on other people for personal hygiene, for unable to communicate. They want to be remembered how they are, and I think that's what this is really providing many people, and that's the reason that most people are coming to see us, is that they don't have uncontrolled pain and symptoms that palliative care really do manage very well. And many times people come to us with wonderful palliative care, and they've got no active physical issues, but they've got this existential concern or fear of the future.
Is that enough?
I think so. I mean, people are suffering, and this is a way to ease their mind. I mean, they don't even have to go through with this. They can just get the medication and have it in their house as a comfort, that if anything ever got that bad to a situation where their life is unacceptable to them, then they've got an option.
Well, thank you for coming in. We just got an email from Robert who says you're heroic. He hopes somebody like you is around for him.
Thanks.
A lot of the attitudes we get.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cameron McLaren, oncologist from Berwick, and one of the, the leaders in the area operating with the assisted dying legislation.